Is Salerno the best place to move to in Italy? This is what we're going to be unpacking in today's video because if you didn't already know by now, I used to live in the city of Salerno for 4 years and now I'm back living in the province itself. So I feel like I know this part of Italy well to be able to give you an honest breakdown of the pros and the cons of the city of Salerno so that you can decide whether it could be a good place for you to move to. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, where on earth is Salerno? Don't worry, that was me like 8 years ago. I can tell you it is of course in the southern part of Italy, south of Naples and very close to the Amalfi Coast. So in my opinion, it's in a really prime location. Now, in terms of population size, as of 2025, the number of residents in Salerno is approximately 423,216 people in the city itself. And the average age of the population in the city of Salerno is currently 47.4 years. So it's a slightly older demographic. And the reason for this, I really believe, is because we are in the south of Italy. If you didn't know by now, please know that opportunity, career progression is lacking in this part of Italy. And so at a certain point, young people leave this part of Italy, go to more northern parts or different cities and towns outside of the south, or they even leave the country altogether. And so what you find is that in southern Italy itself, the average age tends to be a little bit higher as a result. Now, if we're going to talk about the location of Salerno city, we have a lot to unpack because, as I've just touched on, Salerno is situated a stone's throw away from the Amalfi Coast. In fact, the first Amalfi coastal town, Vietri sul Mare, is a 5-minute drive by car at most. And honestly, it's one of my favourite Amalfi coastal towns because it feels real. Unlike the rest of the Amalfi Coast, which tends to feel like it's sold its soul to tourism, Vietri still feels authentic. And so I love that town as a result. But it's also the only Amalfi coastal town with a train station. So it's very well serviced in that sense too. But if you fancy visiting the rest of the Amalfi Coast from Salerno, you can take the boat or a bus, or you can drive. But I have to be honest with you and say that in all the times that I have visited the Amalfi Coast, I have far preferred going by boat because it's just a much more comfortable experience. And it's pretty beautiful to see the Amalfi coastline from the sea. Because you see, the Amalfi Drive, as much as it is really kind of dreamy in its idea and notion, is a little bit nerve-wracking in reality because the twists and turns on the Amalfi Drive are like nothing you've ever experienced before. Also, you should know that if you encounter an incident or some kind of an accident, you are stuck on the Amalfi Drive until it is resolved because at points the road is so narrow, it's impossible for you to maneuver your car and go back the way that you came. So it's a little bit precarious. I would suggest, though, that visiting the Amalfi Coast is a must. And if you live in Salerno, you can do this any day of the week, whenever it takes your fancy. And that's a pretty awesome thing to say, considering that the Amalfi Coast is a bucket list holiday destination for so many people. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, well, actually, I think I really want to live along the Amalfi Coast, watch this video here because there are a few things you need to know about that decision. But taking it back to Salerno, other than the fact that you are so close to the Amalfi Coast, you're also around 40 minutes by train from Naples. You can, of course, drive or take the bus as well. But Naples is amazing. It's a gritty city, but is it full of life and energy and vibrancy? And the food? Oh, yes, it is. And I love it. So many people look down on Naples. They're like, oh, it's so dangerous. It's dangerous everywhere. Like, yes, if you go to Naples and you lose your mind and you don't watch your stuff and you go into places and parts of Naples that perhaps you shouldn't be going into, I can't promise you're going to have a great time. But if you're sensible and you appreciate the city for what it is, I honestly can tell you that it speaks to you in a way like nothing else. It's amazing. And you have that fairly close to Salerno as well. And let me just remind you, it is the home of pizza. So, if you want to taste the best pizza you've ever had, yes, you can taste it in Salerno City, but you can also go to its birthplace in Naples as well, which is pretty amazing. Now, what else do I want to say about location? It really pays that Salerno city is on the mainland for a couple of different reasons. Now, I feel like I can say this from experience because for 2.5 years, I lived in Sicily, Palermo to be precise. And honestly, island living compared to mainland living does feel different. Firstly, it feels like things move a bit slower when you live on an island. Like I remember ordering things from Amazon and it being rare for them to arrive the next day. It would usually take a couple of days at least. Whereas here, back living on the mainland, next day deliveries are like the norm for pretty much everything that you order. Also, when it comes to travel, if you want to explore other parts of Italy, if you want to go on holiday outside of Italy itself, your options are more limited living on an island compared to living on the mainland. For example, in Sicily, you have like the train, because yes, the train actually goes onto a boat and takes you to the mainland. I will show you a short up here so you can see it for yourself. But not only that, you have the plane and you have the boat. But you see, those companies know that they can capitalize on the fact that your options to travel to Sicily are limited. And so you often find that tickets, especially at Christmas and Easter, are ridiculously expensive. And this is something that was raised even at like a regional and government level as well, because it started to feel like residents themselves were being discriminated against because of where they live. Now, I will say on the mainland, yes, you can find that prices can be expensive at particular times of the year, but there does feel like there is more competitiveness because you're not solely dependent on one or two forms of transport. You literally have every type of transport available to you. So it's just another reason why I think it's good that Salerno is on the mainland as opposed to being on an island. Now, as I was saying before, if you want to explore Italy, Salerno is very well placed for you to do that because it has an airport which opened last year, and currently it is operating both internal and international flights as well. So that's a really good place to fly from. I will say that there are plans to expand the routes that are available from their airport and maybe even the airport itself in the future. So that will be interesting to see. But there's the train station, which, as I've mentioned before, covers pretty much all of Italy. You can get trains to Milan, Bologna, even to Sicily. It's pretty amazing. And then you have a good bus network and you have the boat as well. So literally you have so many options available at your fingertips. It really helps you to be adventurous and to get out more and to explore. Like from Salerno train station, you could go to the capital city of Italy, Rome, in around an hour and a half if you take the fastest train. Like that's pretty amazing. And it's definitely not as easy as that if I were to be traveling from Palermo, for example. So I really think in terms of your ability to move independently, Salerno is fantastic in terms of its location. Now, of course, you've got the sea. This is another plus point for living in Salerno because as much as the water isn't fantastic year round, I have to be honest with you, it is a port city, and unfortunately the port does impact at points the quality of the sea water. But I will say to you, it is pretty nevertheless, like really pretty. And you have a couple of beaches in Salerno. You have Santa Teresa, which is right in the heart of the city itself. And then just a little bit out of the city in one of the suburbs, Pastana, there is another long stretch of beach as well, which there was a little bit of controversy around this year because they used sand that may not necessarily have passed the necessary requirements for that particular stretch of beach. So it's not a beach city, okay? You can go, you can spend, an hour on the beach, you can go there, but it's not the place where people will flock to and spend all day on the beach. Some people do, but the majority of residents in Salerno will either go along the Amalfi Coast, which is not too far from Salerno itself, or they will travel along the Amalfi Coast, which tend to be better areas in terms of beach and sea quality. Now let's move into cost of living. This is a big topic, but we're going to focus first of all on the housing market because I've been doing some research and I uncovered some interesting stats about the housing market in Salerno. In fact, the first stat was something I kind of knew all along, but now it's been confirmed because year on year, the housing market in Salerno has seen an increase of about 2.33%. with average property prices, according to Immobiliare, now being €2,797 per square metre if you are buying a property, and €11.89 per square metre if you are renting a property. So how does that look in terms of physical cost? Well, if you were to have a 70 square metre apartment, for example, that would mean it would cost on average around €195,000. If you were to have a 70 square metre apartment to rent, that would be on average around €832 per month. Now, of course, caveats galore. It really does depend on where in Salerno you are. If you position yourself in the historical centre or right by the sea, you can expect to pay rent on average of upwards of €1,000 a month. And you can expect the price of properties for sale to be a lot more expensive as well. A couple of other things to note. This is the reason we don't live back in the city of Salerno itself, because we saw how crazily priced some of the places were to rent. But also the availability of rental properties has reduced, I would say, somewhat in recent months, because a lot more properties now are being turned into short-term lets and also being turned into Airbnbs to accommodate the growing tourism that the city is experiencing. And so it has put a bit of pressure on the rental market, I would say, and people are taking liberties a little bit in terms of the rental prices as a result. So there's this to factor in. You can get slightly reduced kind of rents and cost of housing in the suburban parts of Salerno. So I'm thinking kind of like south of Pastena, you have Carmine, you have Erno, but I wouldn't say that they are as cheap as they would have been in the past. Definitely things are going up day by day in Salerno in terms of the housing market, but I do think it's a good opportunity to invest, because if you have been sitting on the fence about whether or not to buy a property in Salerno, I think now could be really, really interesting to consider it. And when we talk about the future of the city, which we'll do at the end, I think you'll understand just why I say that. Now, what else do you need to consider when it comes to cost of living? Well, of course, you will have your various taxes and utilities that you have to pay, which in terms of utilities, it's pretty impossible for me to sit here and give you like a blanket answer as to how much you will pay, because of course that is not city specific. It's dependent on where you live and your consumption. But I will say one tax that is applicable to Salerno and also nationwide as well is what is known as the Tari, which is essentially like the rubbish tax. It is the tax that every Italian person has to pay, whether they are a citizen or not, towards the cleaning services and upkeep of the city that they live in. Now, Salerno is actually seeing quite an increase this year compared to 2024. So the increase has been 5.4%, which means that the average family pay per year €464 for their Tari tax. Now, I will say to you, the Tari is dependent on the number of occupants and the size of your home. So again, this feels like it's a little bit more personalised as to how much you will pay. But as a general average amount, it's around €464 a year. So these are some other factors that you have to consider. Now, when it comes to kind of just living in general, like, going out to eat at the restaurant or going to the bar to have a drink, I do think that parts of Salerno have become a little bit touristy, particularly, I would say, Piazza Libertà. I say this wrong every time. 1 minute. I'm going to do what I do alone every time. So I'm keeping it real, right? So here we are. Look, this is what I do every time. It makes a real difference. Libertà. Okay. Piazza Libertà. We arrived. So yeah, some restaurants there, I would say, are very touristy because they are right by the port. So they capture all the tourists coming off the cruise ships. I know this because we had a pizza there the other week when we went to see Luci the artista with one of our friends. And I chose that location because we had Tina with us and I wasn't sure if she would be able to come into some of the other pizzerias that we like to go into. And goodness me, it was quite touristy for the prices. I'm not going to lie to you. So I will say to you that you will find the places where the locals go. Absolutely. I have my favorite pizzerias and restaurants that I like to go to. where they're not as well known by tourists. And so the prices are pretty reasonable for where you are in Italy. I think you can live quite comfortably in terms of buying food, eating out, absolutely. Everything depends on your budget and your personal circumstances, but you have a great choice of restaurants, bars. The nightlife, I will say, is a little bit more limited. We'll talk about that in a moment when we talk about the quality of life. But again, if you want to go and have a couple of drinks, it's not going to break the bank necessarily, but it does depend where you go. If you decide to go for drinks in the centre of Salerno, of course, it's naturally going to be more expensive than if you were to go to one of the bars in the suburbs. So there's always those factors that you have to consider in any city here in Italy. But overall, I would say the cost of living in Salerno for the housing is expensive, yes, certainly compared to previous years, but not as expensive as other parts of Italy. So there's always this balance. But in terms of eating out, general food costs, things like that, I think you can get by, with an average amount of money behind you, depending, of course, on your own personal needs. But leading into the quality of life then, as I was touching on before with the nightlife, Salerno is not really renowned for its nightlife as a city. You have on the Corso Vittorio Emanuele, which is like the main shopping precinct in the heart of the city itself. There are quite a few bars and places that stay open until late at night, but it's not a buzzy, thriving nightlife. And really, it feels buzziest, if you like, in the summer and kind of around the big holiday celebrations. During the week, it can be pretty quiet. It's this: people will leave Salerno and go to neighbouring cities if they want to have a change of environment, a change of pace, different things to do. This is Salerno, and I feel like this is why I felt at the end of 4 years that I had experienced all I could in that city, because things do feel a little bit repetitive after a while, and that might be okay for you. Like, you might not be a big lover of the nightlife, or you're quite happy to travel out and experience other things, but just know that Salerno isn't as buzzy a city as, say, Naples, for example. So you've got that comparison. I will say, in terms of connections, which we've spoken about before, and location, it adds to the quality of your life dramatically because you can easily move around independently. And I would suggest that, for most of Salerno, you can easily reach it on foot as well. Like, I never felt like I needed to drive when I lived in Salerno because everything was within easy walking distance. So that's a huge plus. I will say to you, Salerno is quite a hilly city. And so if you have any mobility problems, if you have any health issues, consider where you live very carefully, because some parts of the city can be quite high up. And especially if you're not driving, can be a bit difficult to climb those hills after a while, trust me. What else for quality of life? I would say traffic is a huge problem in Salerno because there's one central rim road that connects the entire city. And if you have just the tiniest of problems on that rim road, it kind of backs up into the city itself. It's always been a problem, the traffic. Parking as well. I would say that there are some incredible events that take place in Salerno, including Luci d'Artista. I filmed this year's one up here. This is the famous light show that takes place every year from November, and this year it finishes in February. I don't remember it finishing as late in previous years, but there we are. This draws Italians and international visitors from all around the world to come and see this event because it features renowned artists and the displays are magnificent. So what that means is that there are loads of cars and parking is a nightmare. And so this is a time of year when it's difficult to be a resident in Salerno. I remember trying to go from one side of the historical centre to the other. And what ordinarily would have been maybe a 5-10 minute walk took me 30 minutes to try and weave my way through the crowds in the narrow roads, So it can be difficult at certain points of the year when they have these big events and it draws all the crowds. I would suggest that Luci d'Artista is the real pain, if you like, in terms of how busy it gets and just the sheer number of people. But there are events that take place in Salerno, regional festivals, local events that are run, there's a literature festival that takes place every summer. It's beautiful in that sense, and you can find things to do, absolutely. In fact, if you are considering coming to Salerno just to discover it and feel for yourself what it's like, or you want to come here on holiday, then I think you'll be interested in my insider guide to Salerno. I will link it up here and also below in the show notes because it's currently on a Black Friday promo and it will only be at this deal for the foreseeable. I don't normally run any kind of offers on my products. So you can get 30% off my guide until the 1st of December. And in that guide, I share everything, like where to eat, what to see and do, kind of, things that you need to know about the city itself. It's a fantastic resource. So I highly recommend checking it out if you've not done so already. But I will say to you that in terms of quality of life, you can have a good quality of life in Salerno, absolutely. But there's something you need to remember. Salerno is a real city. So as much as it is pretty, it is also gritty, right? And people forget this. People come and they're like, oh, there's graffiti on the walls, or there's loads of rubbish, or it's not clean. It's a real city and it's expanding year upon year. So as the city gets bigger, more problems arrive, right? It's natural as a result. And so you have to consider that there will be some parts of Salerno that are better than others, some parts that are cleaner than others. And you've also got to consider that you will have problems with crime, not to the same extent as kind of like Milan, for example. I've heard Milan is a bit of a crime hotspot in this period, but I will say to you that crime does exist in the Salerno city area, like, for example, burglaries, thefts, criminal damage, things like this. It happens, but it happens in any city around the world. People come here to Italy and it's almost like they're shocked that there's crime or that things don't look as pretty as they do on the Google search pictures. It's reality, right? So I'm sitting here now telling you that even in the time that I've been away, because I left Salerno in 2022, and of course now I'm back in the province of Salerno this time. Every time that I've gone back to Salerno, I have noticed a change. I've noticed that there are more kind of drunks and homeless people around, especially around the train station area. The train station's always been a little bit dodgy. I feel like most train stations in most cities are pretty similar. Around there, I've noticed it's declined a little bit in terms of the kind of overall safety. But I will say, generally speaking, as a city, I always feel safe and I've always felt safe there. And, I used to walk around quite late at night, coming home from work or coming home from going out of an evening, and I always used to feel safe. So I think as a city, in that sense, the quality of life is good. You've just got to have your wits about you when you're in public. It's this. Other things to factor into when it comes to quality of life are the fact that you have a hospital in Salerno, police station, all the government offices that you pretty much need. Plus, you also have the big shopping precinct on Corso Vittorio Emanuele with a lot of shops along there, lots of independent shops in the different neighborhoods, supermarkets. You've got pretty much everything that you need in Salerno. And so this makes it very convenient to live your everyday life in that city. I will say that there are kind of other shopping centers that you can go to that are not a million miles away from Salerno. So you've got a really good a kind of variety of shops and services around you to live your life as you need to. Now, what does the future of Salerno look like? Because this is a good thing to consider, especially if you plan to buy somewhere. You want to be thinking a bit more long term as to what Salerno is going to look like 2-3 years down the line. Now, there are 3 key things that I've identified that Salerno is kind of working towards in this time. The first is that the hospital itself is currently being redeveloped. Now, the architects have proposed a time period of 3 years for the redevelopment to be complete, but essentially they're expanding and modernising the hospital so that it will be a real state-of-the-art medical facility in the Campania region. Now, something to know with any kind of time period here in Italy, please always take it with like a pinch of salt, because 3 years can easily become 6. It's just the way things work here. And also, the other thing is that whenever they start any kind of excavation work in Italy, any kind of digging, they usually find a ruin or some old artifact that delays the process even more. So yeah, 3 years as a kind of conservative estimate as to when that's going to be complete. The other really big redevelopment in the city is that the stadium is being completely remodeled, redesigned, built from scratch to be a 35,000 seat capacity stadium. And they hope to have this done within 2 years because they hope that the stadium can be a contender to host some of the 2032 Euro matches. So that's going to be interesting. And that's something else to consider as well. This is why you've got to be thinking long term, because if you're interested in the area around the stadium, think about what it's going to be like if they start having regular matches like that and all of those cars and all of those people, right? Pays to consider this, absolutely. The other really big thing is that they are working on expanding the port. So the port is currently fully operational. We have like two aspects to the port. You have the port where the cruise ships dock. They dock on Piazza Liberta, so they are there. The tourists come off, they go around the city, they get back on the boat. And then you have the working port, which is where, you know, like the service boats will go and where you can get the boats to like Sicily and to other countries as well. So this is essentially how the port is, but they want to expand the port to allow larger cruise ships to dock, and they're thinking of starting this work in 2026. And also they want to improve the access roads to the port as well, because that's one really big problem. I would say that the port gets really, really congested with all like the lorries and trucks that are going towards the working port. It can be a bit of a nightmare at times for the traffic. So this is the future of Salerno. A lot of investment is being made. This is why I said to you before that it's a good time to consider Salerno as a city, because I feel like it's on the cusp of becoming something even bigger than it is. So it's this. For me personally, I think that Salerno ticks so many boxes. People turn their nose up when they talk about southern Italy because they don't think it is as progressive or, you know, good as other parts of Italy. But I've always felt a connection to this part of Italy, and I've always felt a little bit protective in a way of Salerno, because I feel like it can offer you so much depending on your personal needs and requirements. But it is an incredible city, and I credit Salerno with having made me here in Italy, and I feel so much better having returned back to what I really call home. And so it's this. If you're thinking of moving to Salerno, I would do some research. I would check out my travel guide, absolutely. And I would watch this video next, because I think the more you get to know a place, the more you can really decide if it's for you. I will see you in the next video.